All right, so we have our 2nd Samuel intro. So just a couple of things before we get started. You have your link to order your workbook, and if you need your first lesson download, so you can order Precept Upon Precept, or you can order the In and Out, which is less homework, but I'm going to be teaching the Precept Upon Precept. So if you have the In and Out, we're going to be going over cross references and things like that aren't in the In and Out. So don't be confused. We're teaching this one, so you can choose the less homework, but whenever we start talking about cross references that aren't in here, don't be confused. You still have the right book if this is what you've chosen. But we're teaching this one, the Precept Upon Precept. And you can choose NASB or ESV. Those are both word-for-word translations. Whenever you go into your Bible study apps like Blue Letter Bible or Study Light, you can choose like NASB, ESV, or KJV, and those are all word-for-word translations, and you can get back to the original Hebrew and Greek. And so here is your Look Inside tab for your first lesson download. And so that will have everything you need for the first lesson. I have not looked at any of these for commentary. Usually I do, just to see what they have out there, and I end up buying maybe one of them, but I decided not to because I end up not looking at them. So I'm probably going to use for commentary Pastor JD's sermons, because he's really good about the word studies, like getting back to the original and just kind of historical context and stuff like that. So there's your first lesson. You have the whole complete lesson, and we're going to take these in 2 parts, because you can see here that she's covering 2 Samuel 1 through 5 on some of your cross-referencing is like full chapters from 1 Samuel. So it's a lot. We're probably going to do day 1 through 3, and then 4 through 5. If I can get ahead a little bit and kind of see if we need to do days 1 and 2 and then 3 through 5 on some of the lessons. But I'm going to say primarily 1 through 3 and 4 through 5. That's how we're going to split it up. And so then you get to your observation worksheets down at the end here. And so whenever you get your big book in, you're going to have observation worksheets for 2 Samuel and 1 Chronicles. So it's a lot. It takes up most of your workbook. So you're going to have, there's going to be a lot of scripture you're going to be going over in this study. And so while we're here, I'm not going to do the big PowerPoint presentation. So Study Light, I use that, and I use Blue Letter Bible, and these are for getting my cross references. I like this, and you'll see I have 1 Samuel 1 typed in, and I choose the New American Standard 1995. Sometimes I'll accidentally hit the regular New American Standard, but the 1995 is the old version of it. So that's the one that I choose. And you can select verses over here that you want to copy and paste, or you can just copy all verses and then put them into your document or whatnot. You can also go and do, if you want to do a word study, you can hit interlinear, and then you can just pop on the word. So like Ephraim. And then it will tell you second son of Joseph, blessed by him, and it will give you all of that. I like using Blue Letter Bible for word studies, and so I just type in, I have my 1 Samuel 1, NASB 95. You have a bunch of Bibles you can choose from, and you can also, they have an app, and so you can do this on the app, and then you just hit tools, and there you have all of your word studies pop up. So those are the two that I choose to use. This one is more, I use this one more for my word studies. I use StudyLight more for copying and pasting stuff in. So I think Blue Letter Bible might be easier to select those word studies. This one, it kind of comes up with the whole thing here, the graphic. So that was that. So just getting back into context with coming from 1 Samuel. Here is our at a glance chart that we did for 1 Samuel, and just going through our chapter themes. We were really coming from, let me see if I can get to my context here. We're kind of coming from the same context that we had from 1 Samuel. Because 1 Samuel, when you're looking at kind of like the scope and the sequence of the Bible, there's Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. We call it the Pentateuch or the Law. Genesis, we call it beginnings. The real book theme for it is who is God and who is man. And so then you get through Genesis, and then you get through Exodus, because Genesis, at the end of Genesis, tells us, okay, how did they get to Egypt? And then Exodus is about them getting out of Egypt being a picture of the world. And then we have Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, and so that catalogs the nation of Israel's, wandering in the being given the law, being given those feasts, those festivals, the layout of the tabernacle, which is all, we've talked about this many times, all of those things point to Christ. So those chapters catalog that, but them given that picture and that pattern, and then just cataloging them in the desert, the 40 years of wandering, and then by the end of it, we're ready to get out of the desert to the promised land, and that's Joshua. And so Joshua takes us into the conquering of the promised land, and then we're there, and there is no king. God is the king. It's a theocracy. And so then we have the period of the judges, which really it was summed up that everyone here, in those days there was no king in Israel, and everyone did what was right in his own eyes. So when we open up, there's Ruth in between that, and the theme of that is Gentile bride redeemed, which points to Christ. Christ is our kinsman redeemer. But then we get into 1 Samuel, and so then we're really hitting Joshua, Judges, Ruth, and 1 Samuel get into our historical books. And so with 1 Samuel, we went from the period of the judges to the period of the kings. So Israel rejected God as king over them. So we have 1 Samuel starts out with, we have a distressed and barren Hannah. She's heard by God and gives birth to Samuel. And then Hannah exalts the Lord and prophesies the Lord's king and anointed, meaning Messiah. And then Samuel ministered to the Lord and was confirmed of the Lord And then we saw that the glory departed from Israel, and Eli and his sons died. And the ark was captured, and then we saw that God's hand was severe on the Philistines and Dagon, their god. And chapter 6, the chapter theme is who is able to stand before the Lord, this holy God. Because the ark, wherever the ark went, and whoever desecrated the ark had a problem, had an issue. But chapter 7 tells us who is able to stand, because the Philistines, they weren't doing anything right. The Israelites definitely weren't, because they had used the Ark of the Covenant kind of like as a talisman. So who is able to stand? Well, Samuel. So Samuel ends up being the last and final judge of Israel, and he is confirmed as a prophet of God. 6, we talked about that, who is able to stand, and then we have Samuel. He judges Israel, and he tells them, he lays it out for them, and we see that Israel laments after the Lord. They say, yeah, we've done wrong. But now we have Israel asking for a king. It's like, okay, well, we use the ark as a talisman, and then we had all these things happen, but now we're asking for a king. So God was king over Israel. It was a theocracy. But after the Philistines attack, they wanted a physical human person as king over them. And Samuel told them this will be the procedure of the king. And with Saul, we see that Saul is chosen as king. He's anointed as king, and that he was changed when the Holy Spirit came upon him. Then we see that confirmation, Saul is made king at Gilgal. But then Samuel tells him the wickedness of asking for a king. So if you remember, Samuel was upset. God came to him and said, they're not rejecting you, they're rejecting me. So then he's like, okay, this is who's going to be king. This is who you're going to anoint as king. And it was Saul. And they're told the wickedness of asking for a king. And then we saw that Saul's kingdom shall not endure. And there were many things that Saul did throughout the course of 1 Samuel. He didn't wipe out the Amalekites, and as he was told to, and he kept some of the spoil and things like that, and it kind of went downhill from there. He just kind of kept making these different choices. So we saw pretty early on his kingdom wasn't going to endure. So God has sought a man after his own heart, which we found out that's David. So the Lord produces for Jonathan, but did not answer Saul. To obey is better than sacrifice. And then we see that David is anointed. Whenever we get into 2 Samuel, just that first chapter, I was like, well, that solidifies some things. And then David, Saul's servant, rids Israel of its disgrace. We see that Jonathan loves David, but Saul fears him. Saul seeks to put David to death. Jonathan, son of Saul, cuts a covenant with David, servant of Saul. And then David flees from Saul. We see none is sorry for Saul, but the distressed, the indebted, and the discontented have a captain in David. And so we saw kind of, Saul turns on David. That evil spirit had tortured him, so they said, let's bring in a musician. And that musician was David. But Saul then, out of jealousy, turns on David, and David's fleeing from Saul, and he now has the company of his own men. So God delivers Keilah through David and delivers David from Saul. And then we see the point in the cave whenever David could have killed Saul, but he didn't, and Saul says, "You are more righteous than I." And then we have the account with Nabal. Nabal is a worthless man, but Abigail is a blessed. So he took Abigail after Nabal died. He took Abigail as wife, as well as there was another woman. So by the end of this, David has 2 wives. When we get into 2 Samuel, there's going to be a lot more. So I think just in our first lesson. So then we see that David goes and lives in the country of the Philistines. And then we have judgment on Saul, just as you did not obey the Lord, so the Lord has done this thing to you this day. And then David must not go up with the Philistines in battle, because the Philistines and the Israelites were assembling again, and David was living in Philistine territory, and he was going to, he was kind of in a predicament. And so, but then we see that the leader of the Philistines sent him away because it wasn't sitting well with the rest of the leaders that were with him. So David gets out of that one, as far as it was either he was going to have to battle against the Israelites, or he was going to have to turn on the Philistines and battle with the Israelites. So he had a predicament, but he gets sent off. He gets back to Ziklag, and he sees that Ziklag is burned, and the wives and the sons of, but he recovers his wives, the sons, and the daughters. And 31 leaves us off with Saul and Jonathan dying. And so we're going to kind of go back over that, because we're going to go through the first part of our lesson with 2 Samuel. So we set context with, we moved out of the period of the judges to the period of the kings with 1 Samuel. And so whenever we hit 2 Samuel, we've also moved out of the period of Saul being king. So Saul was king for 40 years, from 1041 BC to 1911 BC. And David is going to be another 40 years, and then Solomon, his son, another. And Samuel we see is prophet and judge to Saul. We're going to see who is prophet to David, because Samuel had died in 1 Samuel. And then whenever we get down the line with the rest of the kings, that's where you can start putting in your prophets to the kings, as far as like your Daniel's, your Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Isaiah. Those are your major prophets, and then your minor prophets fold into all of that. So when you're just going through the Bible as a whole, you have the Pentateuch or the law, you have your historical books, and then you have the writings, which is like Psalms, Proverbs, Job, and Song of Solomon. And then you have your major prophets and your minor prophets, and all those major prophets and minor prophets fall in to your historical books, which is like 1st, 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Chronicles, and 1st and 2nd Kings. So that's how that all folds in. So whenever you're studying these, you're looking at your time phrases, and you're looking at your time phrases on your prophets down the line, so you know which king they're prophesying to. So that setting context, taking us into 2 Samuel. So for this class, I have a class calendar up here, and as I said earlier, we're taking this, we have lesson 1A, which we'll go over the homework next week, but we're going to do days 1 through 3. And so you see here, I have some dates blocked out in red, which we'll send emails out about. I have to move my business at the end of the month, and I was going to try to teach, but I just don't think it's going to be viable. I think I'm going to end up stressing myself out if I try to teach those 2 weeks, and I'm probably not going to teach very well. And the reason why I was going to try to teach is because I have a trip coming up right there. So I'm not real happy about this, but it is what it is, and we'll all get through it. And you can see here, I don't think I have anything breaking me up for a while. So we will get through lesson 1, and lesson 2 will be a bit disjointed. But it might help us catch our breath a bit because, I mean, it really is. The study's covering a lot of chapters. You'll see down here, I have this in yellow. Katie, my mentor, is teaching Exodus right now. I'm going to see what she teaches next to see if we're going to marry up with her or if I'm just going to go to something else after we hit 1 Samuel. So that's why I have that there. And then I have room for at a glance. I have the context if you want to go back over that. It's pretty much the same for 1 Samuel. So I just copied and pasted that there. So for an intro, we usually just kind of go through the first day of homework. And your first day of homework is going to be your first chapter of Samuel. And so what you're doing is you're looking at, you're going to want to read over it, do the markings that she asked. I think it was anything with dead and kill, and anointed and love. I marked David and Saul and the Amalekite, and I thought that was a really good exercise for when you're trying to figure out who's doing what and who's talking, because it really goes back and forth with those pronouns and things. So even though this is pretty straightforward, it's also kind of a good exercise in when you're marking that to mark those. We also mark our geography, usually in a double green underline. However, I do mark Israel differently. So Israel, I do like a royal blue box around, and it's because I'm always tracking nations. So those of you who are going to be with me in Daniel, you're going to see why I color different nations differently. And so Israel, I just put a big dark royal blue, navy blue, dark blue box around and color it in. Also, I do this because, and you're going to see here in 2 Samuel, David is actually going to be king over Judah before he's king over all Israel. And so I'm going to mark that differently. Because that comes up, especially whenever you get further down in Chronicles and Kings, because there's a split after Solomon, which we probably won't cover in 2 Samuel, but we might cover it a little bit. But whenever you get more into like Kings and stuff like that, that's where you see the split, and how that plays out and why you need to mark those differently. So we're going to see that for those of you who are listening in on Daniel, that will be explained a little more. But so you always take, whenever I approach this, I always look at the bold numbers and I break up my chapters so I can come up with a paragraph theme for these verses, and then these verses, and then these verses, and then that's going to help me come up with an overall chapter theme. So starting out in 1 through 10, now it came about after the death of Saul. So I'm going to be marking all of my time phrases after the death of Saul, when David had returned from the slaughter of the Amalekites, that David remained 2 days in Ziklag. On the third day, behold, a man came out of the camp from Saul, with his clothes torn and dust on his head. And it came about, when he came to David, that he fell to the ground and prostrated himself. Then David said to him, "From where do you come?" And he said to him, "I have escaped from the camp of Israel." David said to him, "How did things go? Please tell me." And he said, "The people have fled from the battle, and also many of the people have fallen and are dead. And Saul and Jonathan his son are dead also." So David said to the young man who told him, "How do you know that Saul and his son Jonathan are dead?" And the young man who told him said, "By chance I happened to be on Mount Gilboa, and behold, Saul was leaning on his spear, and behold, the chariots and the horsemen pursued him closely. And when he looked behind him, he saw me and called to me, and I said, 'Here I am.' And he said to me, 'Who are you?' And I answered him, 'I am an Amalekite.' And then he said to me, 'Please stand beside me and kill me, for agony has seized me, because my life still lingers in me.' So I stood beside him and killed him, because I knew that he could not live after he had fallen. And I took the crown which was on his head, and the bracelet which was on his arm, and I have brought them here to my Lord." All right. So, what you're looking at in here is your 5 W's and your 1 H. Your who, what, when, where, how, and why. So who would be your who's of 1 through 10?
Sorry, I was trying to get my stuff together. I would say my brain right now is like, oh. David definitely is a who.
Mm-hmm.
Saul's a who.
Uh-huh.
Jonathan's a who. And then the man who came out,
Mm-hmm.
did I say what his name was? I missed it.
He did not. He's like, "I'm an Amalekite." No name.
No name, no name Amalekite. So
Yep.
that would be who's.
Yes.
I may have missed somebody, but
Yeah, I mean, it's mainly your main things, who, and then there's the what, like what's happening.
oh, what?
Mm.
Sorry. He's the man from the Amalekite man is telling David what had happened.
Yeah. Yeah, he's bringing him information that Saul and Jonathan are dead. Um, yeah, that's the crux of it. Like the plain thing is the main thing. I mean, there's a lot of little details in this, as far as like, yeah, he's like, "Oh, this happened." David's like, "How do you know?" "Well, this happened." So there's all those details, but I mean, you hit it on the head as far as like, yeah, he's main thing is a plain thing. He's telling David that Saul and Jonathan are dead. Um, and so, really, your main characters here are David and the Amalekite man, because he's telling them about Saul and Jonathan. Um, so, we have who, what, when. When is this happening?
After the battle, I don't know if they gave us a time frame. After the death of Saul.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we have, now it came about after the death of Saul. And so that takes us back to 31 in First Chronicles. And then when David had returned from the slaughter of the Amalekites, that David remained 2 days in Ziklag, and on the third day, behold, a man came to him. So on my paper, I had actually done like a little timeline of that, and whenever we discuss chapter one, I can bring that up and show you. But you have like whenever you're kind of trying to figure out like, okay, what's going on here, you can take those words and you can make like a little timeline on the top of your paper. And I actually had to go back. I was like, okay, wait a second, who was fighting who killed Saul, who did this? And so I went back into First Samuel and got that information. So the Philistines killed Saul, but David, he had gone. The Philistines said, "No, you can't fight with us." So he goes back to Ziklag and finds that the Amalekites had come and raided Ziklag and took all the wives and the children. And so he goes and he gets them back, and so that's all the historical context. That's all the goings on. So, so he had remained 2 days in Ziklag, and on the third day, this Amalekite man comes to him. So that's like a whole explanation of where we are on the win. And I had to go back to First Chronicles for all that. So it's a little easier in Daniel, because it tells you exactly when. But it's so we have our who, we have our what, who, what, when, why. Why? Can we answer why?
Well, David's there because Saul's after him.
Uh-huh.
And so that's kind of like the big picture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He had gone to the Philistines after the second time Saul went back on his word. And then they gave him Ziklag to live in, and so whenever he couldn't go fight with the Philistines, he goes to Ziklag. There is another why question that I want answered in this is, why is this Amalekite doing this? Because we're gonna see something in a minute here. He's not exactly telling the truth. So we have who, when, where, why, how. I think the how is pretty apparent. As far as the Amalekite says, he came from the camp of Israel or the camp of Saul. They escaped from there. Why and how? There's a why question here that I've been thinking on.
So why did the Amalekite lie?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, I don't get it, because it's not, I've been thinking and thinking and thinking on this, because it's like, and that's part of the lesson. Lesson one is discovering he in fact lies. We know he's lying because we just did First Samuel, but for somebody opening up Second Samuel, they have to discover through cross-referencing this guy is lying. And so she takes us through that. But I mean, we could just, it's kind of, I think, like at the end of day one. But just going back into 1 Samuel 31, it says, "Now the Philistines were fighting against Israel, and the men of Israel fled from the Philistines, but fell fatally wounded on Mount Gilboa. And the Philistines also overtook Saul and his sons, and the Philistines killed Jonathan, Abinadab, and Malchishua, the sons of Saul. The battle went heavily against Saul, and the archers found him, and he was gravely wounded by the archers. Then Saul said to his armor-bearer, 'Draw your sword and pierce me through with it. Otherwise these uncircumcised Philistines will come and pierce me through and abuse me.' But his armor bearer was unwilling because he was very fearful. So Saul took his sword and fell on it. When his armor bearer saw that Saul was dead, he also fell on his sword and died with him. So Saul died with his 3 sons, his armor bearer, and all those men on that day together. Um, so yeah, and then she takes you into First Chronicles 10:1-7. Now the Philistines fought against Israel, and the men of Israel fled before the Philistines and fell slain on Mount Gilboa. The Philistines closely pursued Saul and his sons, and the Philistines struck down Jonathan of Ben-Hadad and Malchishua, the sons of Saul. The battle became very heavy against Saul, and the archers overtook him, and he was wounded by the archers. Then Saul said to his armor bearer, "Draw your sword and thrust me through with it, otherwise these uncircumcised will come and abuse me." And his armor bearer would not, for he was greatly afraid. Therefore Saul took his sword and fell on it. When his armor bearer saw that Saul was dead, he likewise fell on his sword and died. Then Saul died with his 3 sons, and all those of his house died together. When all the men of Israel who were in the valley saw that they had fled and Saul and his sons were dead, they forsook their cities and fled, and the Philistines came and lived in them. So we have it here in 1 Samuel and then in 1 Chronicles. But in 2 Samuel, we have this Amalekite saying something totally different. And I'm just like, I'm really trying to figure out the why.
If he wanted to come across as being, for lack of a better word, like a hero for taking his life when he was, so that it'd be in favor, because that's why he has the crown and his cuff, because he maybe had stolen it.
Yeah,
But
Yeah.
he,
Uh-huh.
that was my thought. He was probably
Yeah.
a looter, one of those dudes.
Like, no, I mean, it's like, and I mean, we're really not supposed to be really going into, but it's like, okay, so he knew that David was supposed to be king. He knew David was anointed the next king. So this had to be common knowledge.
Yeah.
But that doesn't, to me, the big why in this is like, you're an Amalekite. David just got through taking care of a group of you. Um, yeah, I'm just like, why? What? I guess he
maybe,
thought he
but
had something to gain.
yeah. It's confusing to me right off the bat, because when I'm reading the very first where it says, "Now it came about after the death of Saul,
Uh huh.
when David had returned from the slaughter." So he
Mm-hmm.
was there. But down here, he's saying he wasn't, because when this guy showed up, he's like telling me what happened. But the very first thing is already saying he was there. So this really, for me, or unless I'm missing something, it's really contradicting everything.
Yeah, I mean, it could be that, he went, we don't know how he ended up at with this Philistines. He had enough information. He was there with Saul because he had enough information about the battle to tell David, but he changed some parts. And he was definitely there because he got the crown and the bracelets.
I think he was trying to appeal to David by saying, "Hey, I killed Saul." Maybe thinking that would give him favor. Maybe thinking David would be
Yeah.
like, "You're my dude."
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you
Yeah.
know how those people are that want to be the first person to tell you a rumor? One of those guys.
Or, yeah. Yeah. And it was kind of funny because uh, Joe and I were talking about this last night, and I was like, I'm just trying to figure out this Amalekite guy. Like, I just don't get it. And he was like, he lied to him, and I was like, because he reads, but then it's like us, we forget and stuff like that. And he was like, he lied to him, and he's like, I thought David just killed him because he was a messenger. I was like, no, I was like, he lied to him, but that's not why he was killed. David killed him for a whole different reason, which we'll see here in a minute, but.
Oh, maybe that's where "Don't kill the messenger" comes from.
Yeah, yeah, like it could be there. Yeah, Katie, she sent out a thing. What did she? Oh, was it First Peter or Second Peter? I can't even remember what we just did. She did send out like idioms that came from the Bible. And a lot of our modern day idioms do come from the Bible. So, yes, I bet you that one was from this. Um, but yeah, so the why, it's just, I mean, I guess it is just to try to be somebody. Um, like, oh, look here, I killed him, and here you go, king. Um, but what would be a good paragraph theme for this?
Don't kill the messenger? No.
The main thing being plain thing.
I guess to me, it's just that, David hears about Saul,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
we get more
Um,
details later, but I mean, that's kind of,
yeah, David hears of Saul's death, or an Amalekite comes and tells David of Saul's death. Just plain and simple. So then moving on, we have then David took hold of his clothes and tore them. So also did all the men who were with him, and they mourned and wept and fasted until evening for Saul and his son Jonathan, and for the people of the Lord and the house of Israel, because they had fallen by the sword. David said to the young man who told him, "Where are you from?" And he answered, "I am the son of an alien, an Amalekite." And then David said to him, "How is it you were not afraid to stretch out your hand to destroy the Lord's anointed?" And David called one of the young men and said, "Go cut him down." So he struck him, and he died. And David said to him, "Your blood is on your head, for your mouth has testified against you, saying, I have killed the Lord's anointed." Whew. Okay, so you have your who. So who's your who still?
David and the Amalekite.
Yeah, and who, what, your what being David had the Amalekite killed for striking the Lord's anointed. Who, what, when, after sunset, um, after they mourned. Why? Why did he have him killed?
Yes, he put his hand against the anointed and he lied. It's probably a little both.
Yeah, it's like, ooh, um, this is bad. So yeah, he killed him because he's like, your mouth has testified against you. Why were you not afraid to touch the Lord's anointed? Um, and then the how, he had one of the men cut him down. So one of your keywords in here is anointed, and it only pops up twice, and it's in this part right here. But really, it goes back to, if you put these two together, it's kind of a key repeated phrase um, in First Samuel as well, because David talks about that a lot, about Saul being the Lord's anointed. He's the Lord's anointed. No, I can't strike the Lord's anointed. No, I can't. It's he had the opportunity to, and people asked him to, but he was like, no, I can't touch the Lord's anointed. And so we see that is a key repeated phrase. And we
Can I
talk,
ask the question? I'm really confused because he didn't kill him.
yeah,
So
he
you're
didn't.
saying
He
because,
basically killed him just because he lied about
right,
killing him.
But he
But he
doesn't
didn't.
know. He doesn't know that he lied.
Not yet.
Not yet.
so he's thinking he did kill the anointed at this point in time.
Uh huh.
Okay.
Thanks. I needed that clarification because again, this is all contradicting it, going because no, he didn't kill him. You've already read those two other chapters. So I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
I'm making it harder than it is.
Yeah. No, so David doesn't know. He's getting this message. This is the first time he's hearing about it. This guy is saying that he killed Saul and he's delivering the crown and the bracelets. Here you go, King David. But David's like, your mouth has testified against you.
Meaning that you admitted to killing the anointed, not that you were
Yep.
lying. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so right there, because I had already started doing like the day one homework when it says, does it seem like David believed the account he heard? At first I was thinking no, because he knew it was, somebody else. It was the army. But no, he did believe him at this moment. So the answer is yes to that.
I would say. It doesn't show either way, but it's interesting because he's like, your mouth has testified against you. And it's really a lesson in, number one, you shouldn't lie. This guy was lying for some type of personal gain. I don't know if it's because he's like, uh-oh, David's gonna be king now. He's pretty upset with my people. I don't know. But um it's really kind of number one, just don't lie. But it's like, this is what it can get you. I mean, he didn't kill Saul, but he said he did, and he got killed for it. So it's kind of an extreme case. But yeah. Yeah, and so I mean, we're kind of just doing the first day together, so that is a question like, did David know? I would say he didn't. He's just going off of what the guy told him because it doesn't say anything different. Now, if something different down the line comes up, um, that's, we'll know. But this is a case of the guy lied and he lied about the wrong thing and he got struck down for it.
Well, and he also shows up with the crown. So either way,
Mm-hmm.
you're doing something you shouldn't be doing.
Yep.
Either you're looting the dead body, you're doing something you should not be doing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all around, it's a do not do. So yeah, it's just yeah, I also I marked blood. I always mark blood. I guess it's from doing Revelation. But
So I'm sorry, but so back to the question of do you think David thought he was lying? I feel like David did. He may not have known exactly what he was lying about, but I
mhm,
feel like David thought all in all, there is something up with this dude. He is obviously not, something's not fitting.
mhm.
And if the guy wants to testify and say, hey, I killed the king, then you know what? You're going to die, whether you did or not, because you shouldn't be saying that.
Yeah.
So I still feel like David kind of thought, this is not jiving.
It could
And
be.
That's
I,
fine.
I guess I felt that David was pretty much, I mean, in the past, we've seen where he wouldn't lift his hand against the anointed. So I think that was the big thing for him.
Mhm.
Right. Whether
Um,
it was true or not.
and I would say that he didn't know that he did believe the account. I think that's how the question was worded. Did
Mhm.
David believe the account?
Mm.
And I would say yes, he did at that point. And I don't know that there's anything wrong with him bringing the crown. I mean, somebody's got to. You don't leave it on the battlefield.
Yeah, I mean
Um,
that's yeah. I mean, yeah, all Israel
so
had
it's
fled.
But
not like he took it for himself.
he's an Amalekite. I mean,
Well,
should he
yeah. So he's a slave to Saul
Mm.
at that point. So it's not like he doesn't really have a nation to stand for right there. I mean, he's kind of
Oh, so you're saying that he was an Amalekite slave from when Saul uh, conquered them way back when, or
well, I think didn't it? Isn't it? Doesn't it say that he was a
oh, from
slave?
Saul's camp. Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
And so he didn't have like a group of people he was with. I mean, it was him. So it's like, it's survival. It's like, okay,
yeah,
this king's dead. I better go get in with the other king. Take the crown, take it to him. Here you go. You're going to be the king.
Yeah.
I think
And
it's
I'll be your slave.
simple. Yeah.
Yeah. So good point. I mean, we're getting ahead of ourselves because we're not like, but I mean, we've been doing this for a while, so it's kind of hard for us to stay with the basics. But I mean, yeah, I mean, it's a good point. I mean, like, okay, well, yeah, it does says, and this, so this is what we do, and this is when you're doing your homework, you're going to be looking at all these little things, and it does say he came from Saul's camp, so that is indicative that he was of Saul's household, that he wasn't with
Yeah.
this people group that was over here that David just took care of, this Amalekite group. So more than likely, I would say he came into Saul's service the first time when he went up against the Amalekites, but he didn't kill them all like he was supposed to. I mean, he even kept the king alive. Um, so yeah, and I mean, good point. It's like, well, yeah, Saul's dead, so
What am I supposed to do?
yeah, like great. Um, so
And
all
so,
good points.
slaves back then, a lot of times were branded and stuff. So it's not like he could just walk away and everybody would think he was a free man. I mean, you
Hmm.
know, he was a slave. So he
Yeah,
didn't have a choice to not be a slave anymore. He was just
yeah,
going to be someone else's slave.
Yeah. He just wanted to make sure he got in with somebody. So
Yeah.
that's
yeah.
why he went to David. I mean, that does make sense.
Well, and to your point, Gloria, and I think this even we're going to get more into this as we're doing lesson one. The what was the first king's transfers to the next king.
Mm.
So it's like a whole thing. Um, so yeah. But to the question of David knew, um, I would. I mean, I think we'd have to look at it closer. I'm on the camp of at this point, no, I don't think he did know. I think the problem is that this guy is confessing to striking the Lord's anointed. You struck your king. And with Gloria's point of this was probably a slave of Saul's, the armor bearer was in fear and would not strike Saul. And when Saul killed himself, the armor bearer killed himself. But this guy, on the other hand, took the crown and the bracelet straight away and told a story.
So it was the anointed that caused David to kill him, obviously, but would David believe this guy would kill him is the question.
Yeah.
Or if David just was like, hey, you said it, okay, but still kind of doubts it. I don't know.
Yeah. But I mean, the problem is he's saying he's like your mouth testified against you.
Yeah, yeah.
You, you know, and
Could
so
have just given him the crown and kept your mouth shut, buddy.
like so but yeah, I mean, it if we're going to go deeper into application, don't lie, don't lie, don't lie. This is a real extreme case of the consequences of lying and motives behind lying and things like that. Don't lie. So
I think it's also the respect of the position of king. I mean, because it may be different today, but I know when we were growing up, our parents, our teachers, pretty much everybody taught us that, whether you like the president or not, you still
yeah,
address him,
yes,
correctly. You still honor the office. You still, and it's really not a whole lot of difference. It's like Saul was the king. So for you to say you killed the king, that's a big deal.
yes, yes,
Now, this guy wasn't Jewish, so I mean, he wasn't probably following Jewish religion and all that, so he may not have
yeah.
understood the seriousness of it, but
And you're
regardless.
so you are so, I mean, yes. Um It really was. I remember just on that thing of you might not have liked what the king was doing, but you still respected the king. He was the Lord's anointed. I mean, Saul was chasing David everywhere and was wanting to kill him and trying to kill him and all kinds of stuff. But David still respected the fact that he was the Lord's anointed. And just, I mean, in bringing that into today's time, we were taught the president is a president, and you have respect for the man who is in the office. You have respect for the office of the president. And I remember, I think it was George Bush Sr., whenever he died, regardless of what anybody thinks about him or anything like that. I was at Onion Creek Golf Course, and they had the TVs going, and they were showing everybody gathered in the streets of Houston for the motorcade, for the hearse with his body, going through the streets of Houston. And I mean, it was like people from all walks of life, and just, it was respect that a president had passed. And I knew that not all of those people in the crowd had voted for him, agreed with him, or what have you, but it was the fact that a president that had come from their town or that part of the country or whatever had died, and that's where his funeral was, and it was respect for the office. And I looked at my friend and I said, we are witnessing the end of an era, because respect for the office of the president has greatly gone down in the present day.
100%.
Yes.
And just elders in general, I think.
Yes. Yes. So this was definitely, yeah, it's just kind of hitting all these points. And so there's a lot of application just with this little no-name Amalekite. But how would we sum up verses 11 through 16?
I just said David has the Amalekite killed.
Yes. Yes. I have David has the Amalekite struck down because he killed the Lord's anointed. But yeah, you could just have he had the Amalekite killed. And then yeah, I kind of tend to get long with mine, but plain thing is the main thing. So then in 17, then David chanted with this lament over Saul and Jonathan his son, and he told him to teach the sons of Judah the song of the bow. Behold, it is written in the book of Jasher. I might leave that for another day to talk about. Your beauty, O Israel, is slain on your high places. How have the mighty fallen? Tell it not in Gath, proclaim it not in the streets of Ashkelon, or the daughters of the Philistines will rejoice. The daughters of the uncircumcised will exult. O mountains of Gilboa, let not dew or rain be on you, nor fields of offerings. For there the shield of the mighty was defiled, the shield of Saul, not anointed with oil. From the blood of the slain, from the fat of the mighty, the bow of Jonathan did not turn back. The sword of Saul did not return empty. Saul and Jonathan, beloved and pleasant in their life and in their death, they were not parted. They were swifter than eagles, they were stronger than lions. O daughters of Israel, weep over Saul, who clothed you with luxuriously in scarlet, who put ornaments of gold on your apparel. How have the mighty fallen in the midst of the battle? Jonathan is slain on your high places. I am distressed for you, my brother Jonathan. You have been very pleasant to me. Your love to me was more wonderful than the love of women. How have the mighty fallen and the weapons of war perished? All right. So you have your who. David. Um, what? He chants a lament. Why? Because he's lamenting. Um, how? Through song. And let's see. Who, what, when, where, why, how. Did I cover all of them? When? After the Amalekite is slain. So that's kind of how you do your 5 W's and your 1H, because then you can get kind of to the plain thing is the main thing. So for this one, I have David chants a lament over Saul and Jonathan. But just first read, what do you notice about this?
Well, he uses the word mighty a lot, referring to them. And it at the beginning, it says it's his lament over Saul, and Jonathan doesn't mention the other brothers, but um it's like,
He's thinking fondly of
yeah,
Saul,
yeah.
which is understandable. I mean, I guess in a weird way.
Yeah, it's not a, oh, well, now I'm safe. I'm happy he's gone. I mean, he's lamenting, he's mourning, he's saying nice things about Saul. Um, it's respect for the Lord's anointed.
Hmm. And of course, he loved Jonathan. So,
Yes, and so he and Jonathan were in a covenant relationship. You know, we saw that in First Samuel that they made a covenant, and we're going to see how that covenant plays out here in our next lessons. But they were in a covenant relationship. This is not a homosexual relationship. I know people like to point to this verse and say it is. It wasn't. But it was a covenant relationship between two men. Jonathan is featured here because he would have been next in line to the throne, and also it's relative because they were in a covenant relationship. The other two brothers aren't really in the narrative. They weren't really in the narrative in First Samuel because they weren't next in line for the throne. Jonathan was, um, and and it was Jonathan that made the covenant with the house of David. So yeah, I'm sorry.
I think also, I mean, I mean, even today, I mean, I don't think it's any different than between David and Saul. I mean, we have to see the difference between the sin and the sinner. And I think David saw that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and he loved the sinner.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, he wouldn't have liked the sin. But I think it's important for us too to remember that with people.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to love them with the agape love of God, then you have to see that difference.
mhm.
Yep.
Well, and he had spent time with Saul, and I think he actually loved him and pitied him in a way. I think he actually understood that, he was tortured by not the spirit of God for sure, but I think he generally tried to help him in the beginning, and yeah, that's Gloria's point. I mean, he sees he went down this path, but he still deeply loved him. He just didn't love what he was doing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, it's definitely a different. I mean, a perfect way to put it is love the sinner, hate the sin.
Hmm.
Um, and so yeah, I mean, there's different facets here to it. It is respect for the Lord's anointed. He is what he's publicly saying about Saul and teaching people to say about Saul. He's leading them in respect for the Lord's anointed. And then on, you know, further down into that is love the sinner, hate the sin. So we have some, we were surprised with First Samuel, and Second Samuel is no different, where we really have just these layers upon layers of application that we can dig out of this.
Well, and to Gloria's point, David has a heart after God.
Mm-hmm.
So so that's what God does.
Yep.
Into the book of Jashar. It's so funny because in Joshua, he just had as long as day. And so they're talking about how all of that played out, and that it's in this book of Jashar, but that the Holy Spirit did not want that included in our readings. So it's just awesome that it's here too. I'm like, okay, there's that word, there's that book again. But it's the first I had heard of that. So it was interesting.
Yes. So I am gonna probably have to, I do have it on my shelves. I'm probably gonna have to kind of pull that in. I think that the book of Jasher that we have today may not be what it was then. I have come across some things about that. I do have it on my shelves. I'm going to have to look up this passage in it. I'll probably also look up Josephus to see what Josephus has to say about this. But yes, there are books listed. It's so funny because Joe's like, well, they say, oh, it's in the book of the Kings. And he's like, but it's not in Kings. And I'm like, well, it's because they had, other books. But yeah, I'll have to do some research on Jasher as well. But I do have it on my shelves and I can bring it in. But it is extra biblical, and anytime those books don't line up with scripture, then I go with scripture. But because there's like some extra stuff. I read it whenever I was doing Genesis, and there's like some extra stuff in there, some interesting stuff about Ishmael. But again, if it doesn't align with scripture, then it's out. Same with Josephus. So paragraph, and so we'll talk about Jasher next time. Paragraph theme.
David's lament of Saul and Jonathan.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then so you take your 3 paragraph themes, and you can kind of start formulating a chapter theme, which would be
I just did David laments Saul and Jonathan, kind of the same as the end, but to me it was like the culmination of it.
Yeah. I have like David mourns the Lord's anointed and his son. So yeah. And then that wraps up chapter 1. She had you do again, taking you back into 1 Samuel 31. I believe you have to go back into 30 to get the information about David and the Amalekites. She takes you into 1 Chronicles chapter 10. And so we have the biblical account of Saul's death, and then we have what the Amalekites said here. And obviously it was there. He had enough information that he could kind of change some things. And then she takes you into a bunch of cross references about who are the Amalekites. And we did that in 1 Samuel. They are enemies of Israel. They have a history. in the desert. You can kind of go a little further with that, and you can trace it all the way to modern day. And again, I'll reference, it's on, last time I saw it, it was on Amazon Prime. It's Jimmy DeYoung's Esau and the Palestinians, where he traces the Amalekites all the way from Esau all the way to modern day. So the Amalekites are still not totally gone.
That's
Still
crazy.
enemies of Israel.
And so did you send us a link to your notes? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
I have not yet.
Okay, all right. Just make sure I didn't miss it.
Yeah, so you will get this, and so you'll be able to see, like, I'll change this as this happens. If this period in history seems okay and I can teach, I will, but I'm not just going to decide like on Monday to teach. I'll decide the week before. I hate this right here, but it is what it is. And then we'll start building our at a glance chart here. You have your context as far as I just pulled in from 1 Samuel. I pulled that back in, and so the one thing we didn't do, which we can do next week, is I do have who wrote the book of 1 Samuel, but I think I would like to know, because Samuel's dead. He died in 1 Samuel, so what's with 2 Samuel? So we probably need to look at authorship on that as well. Any questions before on what we did today?